He's Jason Whitlock from the Mothership who's joining us. Let me start with that question, Jay. You want the Bills at $1.4 billion or the Clippers at $2 billion?
I want the Clippers at $2 billion because I live a block from the Staples Center and I could walk to work.
All right. If you got the opportunity to sit down with Roger Goodell, you got one question to ask this morning. What is it?
I like your question, but I would want to ask, why couldn't he see that taking on the role of the czar of discipline in the NFL was going to lead to exactly the situation we have today, where his job would be on the line? There is a reason we have a president and he appoints an attorney general. Crime and punishment are very difficult. They're very messy, and it's just way too complicated and too dangerous for someone in Roger Goodell's position to take on that responsibility.
But by proxy, though, it's still the commissioner, though, Jason.
It is, but if you, again, I once wrote a column 4 years ago talking about why this was a mistake. A principal of a high school names a dean and puts him in charge of punishment. If you're going to be the leader, the ultimate leader of a school, a football team, the president of the United States, the leader of a league, you need distance from that because you may have to get rid of that person at some point to execute your vision. And so I think he made a big mistake taking on the responsibility.
Is this more about Goodell or Ray Rice?
Players are disposable. So, Roger Goodell and the commissioners, David Stern was there for 30 years. Bud Selig there for 25 years. This has to be about Roger Goodell. He has far more power and influence than Ray Rice.
What would you ask Ray Rice?
I would ask Ray Rice. I don't know if I'd have a question. I'd have a more comment about understanding what leadership is, because he talked during training camp about being the leader of his family, and I don't think he's done that. I don't think his wife's Instagram post indicates that he's not explaining to her, I'm responsible for all of this. Yeah. It's my actions that caused this. It's not the media. It's I made the mistake. My actions will correct this. Blame me. Don't blame anybody else. If he's providing that message, she doesn't. She puts out a different Instagram post, in my opinion.
Why was Ray Rice suspended? Why was it increased? What happened?
I think that videotape for me, and I think a lot of people, was just more shocking and disturbing than any of us could anticipate. And the public reaction was so overwhelming that as soon as I saw the videotape, I tweeted out, he'll be cut from the Ravens very soon, and Roger Goodell's job is going to be on the line. And again, I know there are a lot of people that far more educated on domestic violence than I am that expected the video to look that bad. But for people that weren't as educated, people like me, that was just shocking. I mean, it's sickening and repulsive what's on that videotape. His nonchalance, the superiority he exuded in the seconds after knocking her unconscious, just really disturbing and chilling. And so they had no choice.
Yeah, it's strange that I expected the punch. What bothered me even more, if it makes sense, is he just didn't care about her welfare, her well-being. He stepped over her, and I likened it to a guy who makes a big hit in the NFL. He stands over the person and walks over them, just nonchalant and dragging her out, getting her shoes, and then
he carried her out of that elevator like a rolled rug, Dan. Yeah. I mean, that was a misbehaving piece of property in his mind. That's how he acted. It literally took me back, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, to 12 Years a Slave and the woman Patsy, the Lupitato character, the woman that won the Oscar award. Yeah. That's how she was treated. And yes, his reaction, I mean, the punches were bad enough, but his reaction in the aftermath just really disturbing and chilling.
He's Jason Whitlock joining us, Dan Patrick Show. I liken it to the Rodney King video that, beatings happen all the time, but you see the video. It's different. You dissected it. We see the police with Rodney King. We saw Ray Rice with his fiancée. We heard Donald Sterling. We like tangible things here in our society. I see it now, therefore it's far worse. And I think that that's what happened. We were able to see this as opposed to, Greg Hardy in Carolina or Ray McDonald or anybody else in any other sport or society. You see it, and it's different.
Great point, Dan, the analogy to Rodney King, because poor people, minority people had complained about police brutality, and those of us in the 1%, or those of us from communities where we didn't experience that firsthand, then you see it on video, it's like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
And your reaction is just overwhelming. So, great analogy. I hadn't thought of that one.
The Atlanta Hawks situation, before I let you go, with the owner, he's making racial comments. Are they racist comments? Danny Ferry's position here is the GM in reading what are considered racial or racist. Give me the difference between those two, or is there a difference in what you heard with the Atlanta Hawks owner?
I think we all have to have the ability and right to talk about race. And then for everybody to go back in 2020 hindsight and, oh, my God, he didn't express this perfectly, precisely, and in politically correct terms, I think is completely unfair. I think the man was talking about inclusion, and we need to understand the difference between being a capitalist and a racist. Capitalism dictates some of the things he's saying in the email.
Yep.
Some of the things that I said as a radio host in Kansas City about making my show more inclusive because it was dominated by black callers and black listeners. I instructed my staff, we have to do some things to make this more inclusive for white males. And we did those things. And some of the instructions I gave very similar to what Bruce Levinson said. So, again, our system of economics is capitalism. It dictates certain behaviors. I did not find what Levinson said to be remotely racist. I think the man has a good heart. He was one of the owners that came out outspoken against Donald Sterling. As for Danny Ferry reading the scouting report, it was stupid. I think he got called out on it during the teleconference. Somehow, to me, this should have been handled privately. I think there's a dysfunctional ownership group within the Atlanta Hawks. There's a group in Washington, D.C. that has control, and there's a group in Atlanta. And so a lot of this seems political to me. Danny Ferry should be disciplined, but I don't think he should be removed from the team. And Bruce Levinson needs his reputation restored. I don't think he did anything wrong.
Yeah, but our reaction now, Jay, is that you lose your job, you lose your team. Like, we want justice and we want it right now. You're not even afforded the opportunity to make a mistake.
And that's sad and unfortunate because all of us make mistakes. And so immediately when I hear these things, the first thing I think about is myself. Could I do that? Have I done that? And I think of myself as a good person. And so when I see people being imprecise and making the same mistakes that I made, I want to be more forgiving and let them evolve. And that's where we need to go. We don't need to allow Twitter and social media to dictate policy. We need to allow common sense and fairness and compassion to dictate policy.
Good to visit with you, Jason. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Jason Whitlock of the Mothership.